Happy New Year, everyone, and good morning. Good morning to all my colleagues on council and to the citizens of the city of Portsmouth. I now call the meeting to order. And Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Present.
Mr. Hugel?
Here.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke? Here. Mr. Moody?
Here.
Mr. Tillage?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker?
Present.
Mayor Glover?
Here. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second for a closed session.
I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A1 for the purpose of discussing and considering A, appointments and assignments of city council members to city council liaison positions, B, the performance of the city manager, and C, the performance of the city assessor.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes? Yes. Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
We are in closed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a need to certify our closed session. We need a motion and a second.
I hereby move that each council member certify that to the best of his or her knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker? No. Mayor Glover?
Yes.
No, and Clerk, I will be submitting my rationale for no, but just to give a brief, I don't think that we can use closed session to discuss issues that are in violation of the charter, and also using closed session to discuss ARPA funds, which had previously been discussed openly. I think that is an open session matter.
All right.
And if we could, we're going to take a 3-minute recess, and we will begin at 10:10. We will begin our meeting at 10:10. Happy New Year and good morning, citizens of Portsmouth and my colleagues on council. I want to welcome you to the first meeting of 2023. Council members, please stand for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Present.
Mr. Hugel?
Present.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Here.
Mr. Moody?
Here.
Mr. Tillage?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker?
Present.
Mayor Glover?
Here. And Madam Clerk, before I ask you to read the speaker's statement, I do want to recognize our newest and youngest council member on his very special day, his birthday. Councilman Vernon Tillage, sir. Welcome aboard, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker's statement?
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will see a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the city council as a body rather than to any particular member of city council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have now come to item 2307, election of vice mayor. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Mayor, I move that we select as our next vice mayor my esteemed colleague, Lisa Lucas Burke.
Second.
Council members, is there any additional discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Hugo?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes, and I would like to pause for a moment. Madam Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Could I speak for a moment?
You have the floor, ma'am.
Great. Thank you so much to my council colleagues for the unanimous vote. I believe that we have a council seated here for 2023 that is going to work expeditiously and in harmony, unity, to ensure that the business of the city is handled appropriately and according to the wishes of our elected citizenry in the city of Portsmouth. I'm humbled and I'm honored to serve as your vice mayor for this council and for the city of Portsmouth. So now on to the business at hand and let's get it done.
Thank you, ma'am. We have now come to item 23-08, adoption of a resolution accepting the 2023 calendar of the city council meetings. And council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for the adoption of the calendar as printed.
Second.
Thank you. We do have one speaker for this particular item, and it is Mr. Mark Godaldig-Yatrovsky. Happy New Year, sir, and if you would state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes.
Good morning and Happy New Year, Mayor, Council, and other neighbors. I have 3 recommended tweaks to the calendar as promulgated. I'm happy to see that in early February, you have provided for a council retreat. I think they are helpful, particularly when you are integrating new council members into a body that has been operating for the last 2 years. So it's an opportunity for sharing of a lot of information, bringing the new folks up to speed, and for all of you getting to know each other better. What I would like to see in conjunction with this retreat is the same process that you use for council work sessions and regular and special council meetings. That is to say that you would record the proceedings to be viewed by the citizenry. There is a lot of information that is passed to council in a retreat that the citizens should be able to see unfiltered. The other piece of that is, if it is possible, depending on your location, live stream the proceedings as they are occurring. The second tweak I would offer to you is the date of the council vacation. You have made provision, and I'm in total agreement with the concept. You've made provision to skip the last meeting in August as a time that all of you can take a little time away with your families during the summer. I would suggest, because of climate change and the fact that hurricane season officially begins on the 1st of June, that you not be absent from the city in the latter part of August. As you all may recall, Hurricane Katrina came upon us in late August, and although there is provision for an emergency declaration that you don't have to issue at the time, but you have to approve later on, I believe in an emergency situation with the intensity of hurricanes increasing as seas warm earlier and earlier, it would be good to have you here at a time that has historically been a very active period for the city of Portsmouth in terms of hurricane activity. Consequently, I would suggest that you move that date to either the second meeting in July or the first meeting in August. Lastly, November recently acquired an additional holiday beyond the two that have more, for a longer period of time, been associated with that month. Now we have Election Day as an official holiday. In addition to Thanksgiving, of course, at the end of the month, and Veterans Day within the first week of the month. Last year, because Election Day and the first meeting date overlapped, you chose to skip the first meeting. I would suggest that because of the way Election Day and Veterans Day fall in terms of the calendar, it complicates preparing agenda items, and it complicates for the citizens the opportunity, once the agenda is published the Wednesday beforehand, their ability to contact people in the city about items that they may have questions about. So I would suggest you do the same thing this year as you did last year and skip the first November meeting. Other than that, I'm in accord with the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Once again, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion among council? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes? Yes. Mr. Hugel?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes. Item 23-09, ratification of boards, committees, and liaison appointments for city council. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
And Madam Clerk, I do need to make one notation for the record. Dr. Whitaker, due to conflicts, is unable to serve on the courts and jails.
Okay.
So if we could make that change.
Okay.
Council members, is there any additional discussion on these items? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Mayor, members of council, I move that we add an item to the agenda concerning the city manager.
Thank you, sir. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
No.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
No.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
It was approved 5-2.
Okay.
Mayor, members of council, I move that we terminate city manager Tanya Chapman for willfully engaging in conduct which is demonstrably injurious to the city monetarily or otherwise.
And just as a clarification, Mr. Moody, on that motion, is that 4 calls?
That is 4 calls.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Is
Barnes?
there discussion, Mayor?
Do we have any council members would like to make any comments at this time? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, I would be voting no, and I would like to just make sure it's on the record that you cannot use closed session to cover for issues that are in violation of our rules and city charter. Documentation that was submitted in closed session was anonymous documentation. It was not substantiated. There were documents, Mr. Mayor, that you presented that you did not identify the source, which makes that an anonymous documentation and information. Also, that if we are to act on issues, it should be issues that reflect legitimate concerns and issues that are substantiated and documented. And again, you can't use closed session to cover that. And so I will be voting no against the procedure as well as against the act.
Thank you, sir. Madam Vice Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, colleagues, for the discussion. I think going into this process, it was probably believed that I might have been the swing vote for this matter. But over the time period that we have served with our city manager, I have found information and just details and circumstances where I, as a woman, and she is a woman, I'm the only woman on this council, I like to give people chances and like to give people options, and would have liked to seen, some 6 months opportunity for us to work together with the city manager. But now that we have a new council seated and we are here to work together to move our city forward, the information that I have found gave me rise to believe that we don't have 6 months to continue to allow this issue to trail along. So I will be voting with my colleagues to move in the affirmative.
Councilman Barnes, you have the floor, sir.
I will be voting no, but I just wanted to say that, just to be fair, this council isn't doing anything that the previous council didn't do. They have the majority, and this is what happens. This is what people do. I'm not mad at them for doing it. They want to bring in who they feel comfortable with their team, and that's what they're feeling that they're going to do. So they're getting rid of the old team to bring in their team. So I'm not mad at them. This is part of how council operates when you get a majority. And so there is a majority, there's a different majority. So they're going to operate that way. I'm just asking anybody, I know they vilified us, don't vilify them. Just remember, this is how council works, this is how politics works. People are going to do what they feel best to get their agenda across. And when you run for office, you have an agenda. One of the silliest things I heard is that people say you have your own agenda. People vote on you based off of your agenda. So your job is to get your agenda across. If not, you're going to get voted out. So I'm going to be voting no. The documents that we were given were provided by the mayor based off of his opinions and things of that nature. So I'm going to be voting no because of it. We don't have any substantial information that gives us the belief that we need to fire her. She's done a great job. A lot of things have happened in the city. A lot of great things have happened. I was hoping that we were able to keep on those things, but we're not. So hopefully whoever the next person is, well, we know who the next person is. We discussed it, that we can build on that and make the city better.
Thank you, sir. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Excuse me, Mr. Barnes,
No.
Mr. Hugel,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg.
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Mr. Tillage,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
No.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. Mr. Moody?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to add an item to the agenda concerning the appointment of an interim city manager.
Is that a motion? And we have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
No.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Just point of order, Mr. Mayor. The position was announced, but did you give the salary and start date?
That'll be the
That'll be in
follow-up
the-
motion.
Okay.
That'll be done.
Later.
No.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Mayor, members of council, I move that we appoint Mimi Terry as interim city manager at an annualized salary of $210,000, effective immediately.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
No.
Mr. Hugel?
Aye.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
No.
Mayor Glover?
Yes. Thank you, council members. That concludes our meeting, our agenda for this morning. Once again, everybody stay safe and healthy. If there's no other business for the order, this meeting is adjourned.